So I wanted to talk about a really important topic, and that is of regrets. And it was triggered by a little bit of a heavy morning class a few days ago about mistakes that you've made before you became on the spiritual path, and then the impact of mistakes made after that. And regrets, I've definitely had a few. And I was thinking about how we often reframe regrets as kind of learning experiences, and they are what's made me who I am today and all of that. And certainly we don't want to live a life of regret, but does regret have an important purpose in our lives? And that's what I wanted to look at. So I have been a little bit of a Agatha Christie fan at one point and read most of her books. But it was interesting that the book that she herself said was her favorite book wasn't a murder mystery at all. And it was a book called Absent in the Spring. And essentially was about a middle-aged woman who had been on a trip to Egypt to visit her son and his family. And on the way back on the train got delayed for 3 days somewhere. And she ended up alone, wandering around this very desolate, boring train station in the middle of nowhere. And really had a crisis of realizing slowly that her family didn't actually love her, but were tolerating her, including her husband, who had made incredible compromises for her. And all of this kind of slowly dawned on her and made her realize that, she had been totally deluded and been making the life of everybody around her miserable for a long time. And she kind of decided that when she was going to go back, she was going to become a new person, which she didn't. But I found it fascinating that was her favorite book. Essentially, it was about someone realizing how they'd been behaving and how it was affecting others, and how it had taken her whole life for her even to have a moment of self-awareness like that. And those moments, when we have them, often do come with oh my God, what have I done? Who have I been? They can be quite devastating. And some of you would have heard of this plant medicine called ayahuasca. And I've actually been in a ayahuasca circle, sober, but watching people having this experience, which often involves a kind of a life review or a deep kind of moments of clarity about your behavior or how far you're off your purpose, or lots of different realizations. And I've seen that that face of, oh my God. And Graham Hancock, some of you might have heard of Graham Hancock. He had a Netflix series, I think, called Ancient Aliens. And he's written dozens of books about ancient technology and this kind of topic. But he had these several ayahuasca experiences. But the one that he often speaks about is where he had been a marijuana user for most of his adult life. And certainly while he was writing all of his books, he would smoke the moment he got up. And he always thought that was his source of his creativity. And during this very powerful ayahuasca experience, he had a life review in which he saw how that addiction had affected his life and affected his relationships with people, and how he distanced himself from people because of it. And it was so shocking to him that he instantly gave up that addiction, like totally deleted after years of, deep habit of marijuana use. And so in those contexts, that sort of, I think it would be very, very hard to be that detached from yourself that you could actually see a lifetime of behavior and the effect it has, and not feel some sort of remorse or regret about it. Just need to turn. It's getting a bit hot. I was also listening to a near-death experience last night. So I had this topic in my head, and everything seems to, of course, echo the theme. And it was a near-death experience of a guy who had died from a reaction to anesthesia when he was 25. And up to that point, it said very clean living, didn't drink, very studious, first in class, very into his sport and everything. And what he had seen was, and this one was a recent experience, a social media addiction, and how it had isolated him, and he ignored people, and he just wanted to be on the phone, and he felt deep regret because he didn't know he was going to be able to come back. He was like, I just want a chance. I just want another chance to come back and do it differently. And, deep, heartfelt regret. And this is just someone who spent too much time on social media. This is not someone who's been abusive or violent or horrendous human behaviors. This is just what a lot of us get into. And so I think deeply felt regret is the result of profound realization of kind of the lottery that you've been given but that you haven't accepted or haven't taken up. And to have it while you're still alive can be a powerful motivator for a transformation of behavior. And in that sense, it seems like a very, very spiritual, a very important, I don't know if it's a feeling or emotion. Perhaps if you linger on it, or perhaps if you identify with it too much, it's there to kind of show you what could be, or what could have been, or what could, now be. If you made that change, a little bit like a Scrooge experience. I think if you stick with it, if you let it sit in your heart and you identify with it and make an identity out of it, then it becomes shame. And I think shame is the dangerous emotion, because that really separates you from other people. Whereas regret, used in the right way, I think deep regret rather than long regret. Long regret means you're just playing it over and over, and probably play it over and over as, again, a procrastination for not actually transforming. I think if you really were sincerely doing your best not to repeat that, that's the best remedy for not continuing regret. And I think the depth of the regret is more important than the length of the regret. And so that heart-piercing realization. And a lot of people's near-death experience, I mean, almost all of them have these life reviews, and everything's seen up close, what you've done, how it's affected other people, and also kind of what you could have done, what you've been gifted with, and what you haven't made use of. And I think that's quite a heavy part of self-awakening, which is not all the love and light. It's probably about facing the darkness. And of course, not with guilt or shame, because again, that's over-identifying and making a story out of it. When I personally think about all the things that I've done, over a long time, to myself, to others, to the body, I do feel there's kind of a lot to acknowledge. But I think it also has made me perhaps more humble. Definitely humble. I think you can't have deep regret towards your actions and continue to be arrogant. And so in that sense, I think regret is par for the course. Like, if you've never had it, you're probably sleepwalking through your life. But so yeah, I think it brings you more humanity, more acknowledgement of the human condition, more self-acceptance, more wisdom, more humility. So, those hard times, and then the inevitable, I think, regret that comes from looking at those things, and then hopefully turning it into a commitment not to do better, but to stay awake, because in terms of, so the mind is thinking, the intellect is judging, and understanding. So this is a model that the Brahma Kumaris use, which is actually, I'll do a session on it because it's a powerful model. And so, the mind is always going towards what it thinks is going to make it happy. And in that sense, I think self-forgiveness is part of recognizing how innocent our mind is. If it's got happiness somewhere, it will just run back to that thing. And it's so, feels so necessary, so compelling, so addictive. And then we've got this intellect, which is the part of ourselves which is comprehending and looking back and judging and able to think long term. And it's a much more kind of sophisticated function in that sense. And then it makes decisions based on its understanding. And so in order to not have regrets, the broader our intellect is, the longer it can see the past, present, and future of my actions, and kind of understand that the short-term pleasure has long-term painful consequences, and the short-term pain has long-term benefits. Like it's the intellect within us that has to mature, and that has to guide the mind and tell the mind, or basically direct the mind away from always getting giving it what it wants all the time, even though it's not good for it. And so that regret, in a sense, is a sign of the intellect kind of being awake, at least, that can comprehend what it's lost and what harm has happened. And then if it can use it in the right way, it can, next time it's faced with a similar situation, it can kind of use it to understand the future consequences. And and then make better decisions. But we'll do a session on that model another time. But and then last night I thought, okay, if I'm going to talk about regret, I should definitely listen to Brené Brown, who talked about shame, and how the kind of opposite of shame is being vulnerable, which is so interesting because especially in a spiritual group where there's a very high standard of spiritual aim, and everybody's falling short of that, but nobody kind of admits they're falling short of that. And so you do kind of speak your weaknesses, it can be considered disservice, or it can be considered affirming negative. But I still think there is a way to acknowledge challenges in order to understand them better without identifying with them. And I think if we don't have shame about the past, if we don't identify, then we're able to say, I find that challenging. And usually when you do, then others also can come and say, not just me, I'm also struggling with that. And then we feel much more real connection, instead of all trying to pretend that we're like perfect all the time. Anyway, bit of a rave. Perhaps you can share in the comment section what you feel about this topic, because I've just been thinking about it more recently in the last few days because of that class. But I'd say this is a topic that is very, very important to our lives. All right, bye for now.